Hello everyone, welcome joining into Tomato Cube learning sessions for the MakeCode Arcade series. So today is the first session for our chapter-based learning series. Some of you might be wondering, what is chapter-based? Chapter-based means that every week we will cover one chapter, and in each of the chapter we will actually talk more in detail of each of the building block that we have in MakeCode Arcade, and also to explain its corresponding programming concept. So hopefully throughout the entire series you will be able to learn more about the codes that you are building in MakeCode Arcade, and hopefully by the end of the series you will gain enough confidence to start coding and also building your own game independently. So my name is Jean. So before we get started, let me go ahead and share with you some of the series that we have before. Some of you might be aware that we have hosted a couple video sessions on MakeCode Arcade before. If this is the first time you are watching this, I will highly recommend you to watch the Getting Started video, especially those of you who has purchased the MakeCode Arcade console from Tomato Cube. Because in this 1 hour Getting Started video, we explain more in detail about this physical console unit. For example, we talk about how to take care of it, where to download more games for your console, as well as how to create a simple game quickly. Basically, it covers everything that you need to get started with your console. Then we also have 3 live stream sessions that we conducted in a classroom setup at a makerspace here in Penang, Malaysia. During these 3 sessions, students follow through a tutorial to create a game called Hungry Dino. In case you wonder what is a Hungry Dino, it's the game that we preloaded into each of the console. So if you're interested to learn how to create the game that you have in your console, you can check out these videos. In case you wonder where are these videos, you can go to facebook.com/tomatocube18. All these videos are available under our videos sessions. So if you scroll down, and you can look for a playlist called MakeCode Arcade Console. So all these videos are available on our Facebook page. So let's kick off today's session. Since this is the first chapter, I will give an introduction about MakeCode Arcade. Alright, today we will cover the following topics. What is MakeCode Arcade? Introduction to block editor, different categories of coding blocks, and finally we're gonna learn how to download your game or your code into the console. So what is MakeCode Arcade? So before we talk about what is MakeCode Arcade, let's take a quick look at what is MakeCode. MakeCode is an online platform created by Microsoft to learn and perform programming. So when we say online platform, basically it means the whole learning process can be done on a web browser, and therefore there's no software installation needed. And thanks to Microsoft, it is free. So what exactly does MakeCode consist of? So first thing, MakeCode has a code editor. It's allowed you to perform programming. And on top of that, MakeCode ecosystem contains a lot of learning materials. It has a lot of getting started guides and also the tutorials. So if you do not know what is coding at all, you can just go ahead to MakeCode, and you have all these information to help you to get started in learning coding. And also, MakeCode has a forum and community to share and support the whole learning process. Finally, MakeCode code compiler also support many different types of hardware and products. So what does that mean by that? So let's take a look. So this is a MakeCode code editor that you see on this laptop. It's running on arcade.makecode.com. It's on the browser, so you can see that all your codes is on the code editor, and you can download the codes and actually load it and run it on a separate hardware. In this case, it's Arcade Console. So MakeCode works on Arcade Console. Besides that, it can also work for Lego Mindstorm. This is an example of a code editor that is running on makecode.mindstorms.com, and similar kind of coding technique. And by downloading the code, it will be able to load it into your Lego Mindstorms and it will perform the operations as you have coded on the code editor. Here's another example. What you're seeing here is a MakeCode that supports Microbit. Some of you might have experienced playing with Microbit before. It's actually a pocket-sized mini computer that's created by BBC, and it can do a lot of different things, like it can detect motions and it can also measure the temperature and etc. We have this MakeCode running on makecode.microbit.org. So similarly, by downloading the game, you can actually load it into the BBC Microbit and it will do the operation as you have coded as well. So all these are the examples hardware that actually work with MakeCode. So let's go to the browser and check out MakeCode directly. Okay, so this is my web browser. Go to the address bar and type makecode.com. It will bring you to the home page of Microsoft MakeCode. So you can see that these are all the links that will bring you to the corresponding code editor. There's a Microbit here, there's a Minecraft, and then there's a Lego over here. For our series, we are going to learn Microsoft MakeCode Arcade, which is this one over here. So click on it. It will bring you to arcade.makecode.com, which is the main homepage for Microsoft MakeCode Arcade. So if you scroll down, you can see that there's a tutorials. There's also multi-part tutorials. So these are the different learning materials that created by Microsoft and Microsoft community for users like us to actually learn how to do programming with MakeCode Arcade. So if you keep scrolling, you can see that, they also have a game jam. So these are the example games that created by users. So I think the last topic of the game jam was traffic jam. So you can see that there are a lot of car or traffic related games that has been posted here. And if you keep going, you can see there's also live streams. There are more games that created by other users. So you should totally check it out if you want to learn more about MakeCode Arcade and also see some of the examples that others have created. So there are a lot of things to explore over here. Now, how do you access the code editor to start programming to create your own game? You can scroll all the way back up here, and you can see there's a new project. So this is where it will launch the block editor. But before we start create a new project, let's take a look around here. This is a project I created before my first game. So if you notice that for every new project that you have created, Microsoft save it automatically on your local computer. So you can continue to work on it whenever you want. So you don't have to worry about losing it. And of course, there's also an import over here. So just in case you created a game on a different computer, or if you want to open your friend's game, you can use the import feature over here to help you to import the games from another computer. Alright, so now let's go ahead and launch a block editor to create your new game. Let's say this is my project, so let me name it Jean's Game. Okay, then hit create. Alright, so this is how a block editor looks like. The MakeCode block editor contains mainly three parts. The first part over here. So this is the most important part because this is where you put your code. Right now you can see that it's rather empty. It only have one block, which is on start. So later on we're gonna learn how to put more codes into your workspace to form the games that you want. The second part is the middle area over here where you can see sprites, controller, game, music, etc. So these are the toolbox where it contains the block that you can use to actually form your game. So these are the different blocks that you can just click on it, drag it, and just drop it into your workspace. Okay, so there's another one here. So as you notice that these blocks, it has different shapes. It comes with different shape. So some is in this shape, some is in this shape. So how it works is like a jigsaw puzzle. You need to make sure that you drag it into the correct location. If it's not correct, you notice that. Let me try this oval shape. So you can see that it doesn't let me snap on to the on start block. If I go to the correct locations, the shape is the same, and you can see that there's this red colored dots and yellow indicator showing that this is where you can drop your block. Alright, if you want to remove any blocks, let's say, let me add some additional blocks into my workspace. Okay, so let's say if I want to remove these 2 blocks, I can just grab them and drop them at the middle here where you can see there's a trash can. So just let go. That's how you can delete a block. Alternatively, you can also click on the block that you want to remove and right click it and select delete block. And the third part is over here. This is your simulator. Simulators show the outcome of your codes. So whatever you have created in your code, it will be reflected on the simulator directly so that you know how your games look like, and you can also play with it on the simulator before you actually load it into your console. Let me pick another example to show you how simulator works. So I have a set background color into my onStart block. Right now the simulator doesn't have anything. So if I say I set my background color to blue, and immediately you can see that your simulator right now is having a background that is in blue color. Alright, so these are the 3 main parts that you can utilize in your block editor. On top of that, let me try to go through every single feature that we have on this block editor, starting from home. So this will bring you back to arcade.maker.com, the home page. So you can see that the games that I just created right now is being saved in my cache on my computer, Jean's game. So click on it again, it will launch the game. So you can see that my codes are still there. Okay, then moving on, the next one is share. So by clicking share and publish project, it will generate a URL link that has your codes. So you can share your game with your friends by using this feature. So we are at blocks mode, and of course the code editor also allows you to program in JavaScript as well. So you can see that these are the JavaScript codes that's being generated at the backend, and then you can also continue to work on it if you want to work in JavaScript. In our case, we are learning using blocks editor, so I'm gonna switch it back to blocks. Of course, I think other than JavaScript, they also have Python. Alright, and here is where you can get help. There are some documentations that you can read up about Maker Arcades. There's also a forum. Forum is, if you recall earlier on, this is where a lot of Microsoft communities or user they share their games on forums. They also post a question, so if you have any question, you can actually post it on forums, or you can read up other people's questions and answers as well. Okay, then there's settings here where you can delete the projects. Yeah, so moving down, there's a zoom in. The plus button is to help you to zoom in, or you can zoom out, especially when you have a lot of coding blocks on your workspace. You might want to zoom out a little bit so that you can see all the codes. Oh yeah, as you can see my mouse, you can actually pan around this workspace. Okay, how it works is just click on the empty area, click on it, and just drag your mouse around. This will let you navigate around your workspace easily. You can also utilize the scroll bar on the side here to scroll up and down, or the horizontal bar here to scroll left and right. Okay. Moving on, there are 2 more buttons down here. The curly arrow looking button. The one on the left is undo. The other one is redo. So let's talk about undo first. So let's say if I change my background color to red. Let's see how it turns out. So if you don't like how it shows up as red color and you want to change it back to blue, you can change it manually this way, or you can just hit the undo button and it will bring you back to the previous stage. So basically, the undo helps you to reverse the step that you have done. So now my screen is blue in color. The undo function is very useful, especially when you accidentally deleted a block that you don't mean to. For instance, I deleted this by accident and I deleted this as well. So let's say if you want to restore them back to your workspace, you can just hit the undo. It will bring you back the blocks that you have deleted in the sequence that you deleted them. Okay, and how about redo? So let's say if I change the background now to yellow color. So as I showed you earlier on, if you want to reverse the steps, you hit undo. It will change the background to blue. If you still prefer it to be yellow, you can hit the redo and it will restore it back to the last steps that you have done, which is yellow. Okay. And next, you also have a button here for you to save the game into your local computer. So click on it, it will come up a prompt to ask you where you want to save your file to. You can choose any locations on your computer as long as you remember it. And if you take a look at the file names that you're gonna save, it contains the project files name that you insert earlier on. In my case, it's Jean's Game, and the extension is .png. Some of you might know that .png is an image file format. So basically, Microsoft encode the source code of your game into an image format. Okay, and for the file that you have saved onto your computer, you can always open them again at the home page earlier on where you have the import buttons. So you click on the import buttons at the home page and you can choose the files that you have saved on your computer and open it that way. And then the last option here is download. So this is the feature that you need in order to download the game into your physical arcade console. So at the end of today's session, we will show you how you can download the game and also load it into your console. Alright, that's all about the block editor. Next, let's talk about the different categories of coding blocks that we have in your code editor in order to help you to form the game that you want. So at your toolbox, there are many different categories of blocks that you can use to form your game. The first one that you see here is sprites. So what is sprites? So to help you to understand what is a sprite, let's imagine this screen over here that we have from the Super Mario game. Sprites is an object that has characteristic to it. So in this example, let me show you what are the sprites that we have in this screen. So the first one is Mario, which is a player type of sprites. Basically, it's a character or an object that can be controlled by a user. And besides player sprites, we also have these two enemies over here, which are also a type of sprites. And besides the enemy and player, there's also another type of sprites, we call it type of food. Basically, in this case, it is the coins that can be collected by Mario. And other than these three type of sprites, the fourth type of sprites is props. So props is a background setup or a part of scene that has characteristic to it. In this case, the cloud is the floating or the moving objects behind the scene. So going back to the code editor. So over here at the sprites category, if you click on it, you can see that these are all the blocks associated to the sprites. So you can do many things with the sprites. The basic one is to create the sprites character. So let me just drag one block into my workspace. And I'm gonna choose an image for it. Let's say a cat. Okay. So just want to show you how does it look like when you have a sprite character on your screen. Let me change the background to white. Okay, so now you can see it better. So this is my sprite, which is a cat looking sprite. And then moving on to the next one, we have a controller category. Basically, this is everything that's associated with the buttons that you can do on your console. So if you click on the controller, and let me choose move my sprite with buttons. Okay, so let's see what happened. So on your simulator, now if I hit my directional buttons, I can actually control my sprites. So anything that you want to do with the buttons on your consoles, you can find the blocks inside the controller category. And then the third category is the game. So some of you might have seen screen like this once you have some message coming out from the game. Thank you, Mario. Or you might even have a message telling you that it's game over. So anything that is initiated or associated with the game is under the game category. The next one is music. It helps to create the sound effect for your game. For instance, let me try to create a melody. Let me try to play a song here. Alright, hit done and wait for it. Alright, now my games has a melody to it. So of course, besides melody, you can also choose other effects, other shorter sound effects, like in this case, a budding sound. Alright, cool. So the next one is scene category. So scene helps to create the backdrop of a game. So in this case, the blue sky, the ground, the tile, the bricks, and also the mountain at the background, these are the scene. Okay, so in our case, our scene is just a pure background color. We didn't set anything to it. So there are other features that you can drag and drop onto your workspace to create a more attractive scene. The next category is info. So info is the information that you want to keep track of your game. In this case, we have information in terms of life. So it keeps track of the life that you have for your player. And we also have another info here that keep track of the point or the score for your game. And some of the games you might even have a timer or countdowns. So all these are the type of blocks that we have under info category. Up to now, you have learned 6 categories. These categories are the basic categories and they are very straightforward, meaning that you can see the outcome directly on the screen, or you can hear them, or you can interact with them directly. The next 4 categories are more abstract. They are used for programming concept, or they are used to control the behavior of your game. So let me go back to the editor. So do you notice that I have been placing my block inside this onStart block? So what is this onStart block? So if you mouse over the onStart block, you'll notice that there is a message that says run code when the program starts. It means whenever the computer starts running your game, it will run the code inside this onStart block first. Or if you load this game into your console, the moment you power up your console will run this part of the code first. And the console will run them sequentially, meaning that it will first set the background color to white, then only it will create a sprite that has a cat image on it, and then it will allow you to control your sprite with buttons, and lastly, it will play the sound budding. Let me change things a bit. Let me change it back to a melody. Let's say simple one. Okay. Alright, you can see that the melody plays right after the background is being set as white color. So if I'm gonna move this play melody to the top, so the computer will play the melody first, then only it set the background color to white. So codes in MakeCodes, or in general, all the programming language is being run sequentially. Okay, so sequence does matter. Alright, coming back to the categories. So here we have a loops categories. So what it does is to help us to repeat the steps that we want to perform. For example, we have a play melody here on start that play once. So if you need it to play twice, what we can do is you can right click and duplicate the block. So you can add it 2 times here. You can keep repeating your codes if you need to repeat the certain actions. But the more convenient way of doing it is you can utilize the loops block. So there's a repeat block here that you can utilize. Let me just drag one in. Okay. And I'm gonna place these two blocks inside here. So as you can see, as I move, the whole thing will move. So let me just put it in first, and then I'm gonna move the other 3 blocks out. So now I have repeat 4 times. Let me just change it to 2 and just remove 1 block. So this is the same as what you've seen earlier with 2 blocks playing melody. Alright, so that's the objective of the loops block. The next one is logic. Logic helps to control the flow of your game by using condition. So what does it mean by condition? So coming back to the slides. So condition is like, imagine you're standing in front of a traffic lights. And in order to control the traffic, there are certain rules that we want to follow, or we want the system to follow. So if it's a green light, then only we can go. If it's a yellow light, then we have to slow down. Otherwise, if it's a red light, then we have to stop. So these are the conditions that we have in our today's world traffic system. So similarly, we can use the same example in our game as well. We can use the condition to say, if Mario touches the enemy, takes a damage. Otherwise, if it touches the coins, then gain a point. So these are the example of how we can use condition in our game. Next category is variables. Variables is used to help to store a value in your game. A value can be a character like A, B, C, or it can also be a string. A string is like a words or text that you can store. Other than that, variable can also store a number. After the variable is math category. Math category contains a lot of blocks that you can perform multiple mathematic operations. I'm gonna use these 2 categories to form an example. So say I want to create a variable that called age. So I'm gonna use this age to store the age for the cat. So first I'm gonna set the age to 0. Then I'm gonna ask my sprites to display the age. So I'm gonna say sprite says age. Okay, so after playing melody twice, then you can see that my cat says 0, which is the age. Then let's do something. Let's increase the age by 5 years after the melody. So I'm gonna move the melody down here, remove the repeat block, and I'm gonna say set my age to age plus 5. How do we do that? So I'm gonna use a math operation, drag out the plus block and say age plus 5. Okay, and I'm gonna ask my cat to say the age again after playing the melody. Okay, this is age 0, then become 5 after the melody is done. Alright, so moving on, we have advanced blocks down here. If you click on the advanced blocks, you can see that we still have multiple blocks that we can use. So image block, you can perform more advanced image operation. For example, you can change the color for your cat into a different color by using the blocks inside the image category. Then we have a function category. Functions enable us to reuse the code that we write without having to write the same codes over and over again. And then the next one, we have arrays. So if you need to store more than one value, you can use array. You can imagine array is like a train. where you can have multiple containers to help you store multiple items. In this case, for example, we have an apple in my first container, and if you need to store more than an apple, you want to store an orange too, you just need to add another container. So you can keep adding stuff into your array to store more values. So in this case, I have added strawberry as well, lemon into my array, and I added pear into my array, so on and so forth. Next category is a text. So text allow us to manipulate the string, either to combine multiple strings together. Remember, strings can be a text or it can be a words. So in this case, we can combine the string or we can compare the string to do certain operation. And the last category in advanced blocks is console. Console is used for debugging or troubleshooting normally. Instead of displaying the outputs on the screen, we can actually output it in our game without really showing it on the string. So that's for debugging purpose. In case you wonder what does debugging means, debugging in programming, it means removing bugs from your code. It's not actually a physical bug that you can see in your codes, but bug here means an error or problems that cause an issue to your game or to your code. So you want to find it, where is the problem, and you want to remove it from the code. So that action is called debugging. So far we have covered many different types of categories. We have covered the basic ones from sprites and all the way to the math category. Then we also cover advanced categories from images to console. Other than that, we can also add some additional categories to our code editor. We call that extension. By adding an extension means you're adding more categories into your code editor. For example, we can add an animation categories that allow us to add animation to your sprites so that it looks more attractive or interesting. We can also add status bar categories to the game, advanced timelapse, and etc. Let me show you how it looks on the code editor. There's an extension button here. If you click on it, it will show you all the extension that's available to you that you can add to your code editor. As you can see, there's animation here. And if you keep scrolling around, you can see more options, color code, tile map, status bar, etc. You can also search for them instead of looking through the list. For instance, I can insert animation and hit enter. And that should return you the extension that you're looking for. So besides all this extension that's available to you by default in Microsoft, you can also add a third-party extension. How to do that is by inserting the URL here. It's located in a GitHub. So in this case, I'm trying to add a third-party extension created by TomatoCube. And what this extension does is it will add additional image to your sprite gallery. Before I add this extension, let me show you how it looks like in my sprite gallery. Going back to my sprite gallery. So these are all the images that's available to you by default in your code editor. So if I want to add more images, I can go back to my extension earlier on, insert the URL. So this is an example that we use a lot in our previous tutorial in our Hungry Dino series. So this extension will add more images to my gallery. So going back to my gallery, and if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you can see that we have some additional dinosaurs images being added to the gallery. And finally, let's take a look how do we download game into your physical console. Alright, so let's go back to the code editor. So remember this download button down here. So what we need to do is click on it and look for F4. So F4 is an option to generate a UF2 file that works for your TomatoCube console. So click on this purple color F4. It will prompt you to save the file to your local computer. So if you take a look at this pop-up box, it contains the name of your game and with the extensions of .uf2. Okay, so save this file on your local computer. It can be anywhere as long as you remember the location where you save it. In my case, I'm saving it on my desktop. So hit save. So next thing, let's plug in your console to your computer. So here's my console. I'm using a micro USB cable to connect my console to my computer. Let me plug it into my computer. Alright, so let's power it on. So you can see that my console, the screen on my console is showing an F4 with a purple color screen. So this means my console is in data transfer mode. And at the same time, you might notice that there's a pop-up box on my computer as well that say Arcade F4. So this is the folder in my console. So what this means is when your screen on your console is in purple color, it means your console is in data transfer mode. So meaning your console is now ready for data transfer. You can copy the file from your computer to your console. And one more thing, if I hit on the reset button, it will actually bring it back to a gaming mode. So there are actually two modes on this console. This is gaming mode, and if I hit the reset button one more time, it will bring me back to data transfer mode, which is this purple color screen here. Alright, so that's how you can switch around between gaming mode and data transfer mode. So now that I'm in data transfer mode and I can see that this folder, Arcade F4 on my screen, so what I'm going to do is to copy the files that I downloaded earlier on from my local computer to the console. It's located on my desktop, so I can just go ahead and copy, paste it to my arcade folder, or I can just drag it and drop it directly to my arcade folder. And as soon as the game is copied to my console, the console will run it automatically. So you can see that the cat is now on my console. Okay, so that's how you can download the game from a computer to the console. So before we go, let's do a quick recap. So the first thing, do you remember what is MakeCode? MakeCode is an online platform to learn programming, and it generally consists of code editor, learning materials, and also a very strong support community in the forum. How about MakeCode Arcade? MakeCode Arcade is a type of MakeCode, and it contains the coding blocks to help you to build games. What are the three main parts in Block Editor? We have the workspace, and we also have the toolbox that contains all the coding block. And lastly, we have a simulator. In order to form a game, can you name a few code categories in the toolbox? So some of the code categories that we have are sprites, controller, game, music, and etc. Another question for you, which category in the toolbox creates the player in your game? That is sprites. If you need to perform an action more than once, do you remember which category contains the block that you need? That is loop. So what is a condition? Condition is an expression that you can add to the program to perform if true, do this, else, do that operation. And lastly, do you remember how do you download the game you wrote to a console? So first, you need to hit on the download button on the code editor. When the pop-up shows up, select F4 in your hardware. F4 is the one that in purple color. After that, plug in your console and make sure your console is in data transfer mode. Then copy the UF2 files from your computer to the console. So that's all for today. And for the next session, we are going to cover more in detail on sprites and motion. So see you all next Sunday, same time at 2 p.m. in Malaysia. Oh, by the way, before we leave for today, just want to give you a quick information on how can you get help if you bump into an issue with either the console or arcade. So you can reach out to us by joining the Facebook group that we have created called Maker Arcade by Tomato Cube. You can leave us a message there directly, and occasionally we will post some updates on video clips or learning material as well. So that's all for today. See you all next week.